Mixed martial arts. How do we like those martial arts? I don't know, because I can't do this as good as Casey. We like them mixed, baby. Casey's so much better at that than I am, but hello, everybody. Welcome to the UFC 287 preview show. We are live on the MMA Fighting YouTube channel. So thank you for joining us.
This song is a banger. Can we just talk about this as a banger? Gets me ready every week. Every week I'm hyped for this.
I heard this song in some other random reality show because it's just like a stock song. And I was, oh my God, look at this. And it got me ready for a fight. I got me all hyped in the middle of some shopping or something. It was weird.
I've noticed that the theme song for On to the Next One is on like a dozen commercials. It's everywhere. It's all over the place, which I don't know if I'm sad or I chose the right song. I don't really know, but that's beside the point. Thank you for joining us. Of course, the UFC is back in Miami. UFC 287 going down tomorrow. We have a very fascinating main event for the middleweight title. Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya 2 or 4, however you want to look at it. Jorge Masvidal's homecoming party taking on Gilbert Burns. Incredible main card, and we'll talk all about it here. But happy to be joined by, of course, Mr. Shaheen Al-Shatti. Shaheen, how are you, my man?
I'm doing well, Mike. I'm doing well. I enjoyed your Casey imitation there, the Casey rendition. You just got to commit. You just needed to commit a little more harder, and then we would have had it. It would have been perfect.
I know. I got tackled at the 1 yard line. And joining us, just feeling the Miami vibes, is the one, the only.
Oh, you want the Miami vibes?
Oh, hit him with it. Hit him. Oh my God.
Look at Jorge Masvidal. Jorge Masvidal. If I had a colorful shirt right now, I'd be killing it. Buttoned up to like here. No need for buttons beyond that. Just should have done it. I thought this through at all. That's absolutely the energy I would have brought to the show.
Why on earth do you hide that thing? That is majestic.
There's just a lot of it. There's so much of it, dude. There's just so much. I'm glad I showered this morning. Otherwise, it would not look nearly this good.
That is majestic. That is just stunning.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you.
You look like Matt Riddle.
I got to be honest, I hadn't thought about this, but I may now have to go buy a Hawaiian shirt for tomorrow for the is the secret out? I don't know if I can say the secrets of tomorrow's watch along party, but I'll be making an appearance and I might have to go full Miami Vice tomorrow.
Can you like get your hair like really wet too? Like I need you like WWE levels of wet.
We could do that. I'm at my parents' place now, visiting them for Easter weekend. They've got a pool. I should jump into it, pop out, and then it's basically the same.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, said, spoiler, I might be wearing a Miami shirt too. In fact, I will be. I already bought it. It is tremendous. And you know Connor is probably going to be wearing like a 3-piece suit. So it's going to be a good time. So join us tomorrow. Jed will join us. It'll be a lot of fun. But gentlemen.
Mike, real quick, Mike, this is very important. This is very, very important. Before we actually talk fights, two bald boys here. Have you ever had your hair that long in your entire life? Because I never ever reached past the point of like that uncomfortable length where you kind of just feel real goobery everywhere. I never got past that.
You gotta commit.
I 5th grade, 6th grade, little Zach Morrissey, where I had like the part in the side. Went with the part in the middle for a little while. And then that was it. Like that lasted for a few more years. And then by my sophomore year in high school, dunzo, cut it short, would get a haircut like every week to 10 days. And then I lost the battle altogether.
Every week.
Every week is intense.
A lot.
Yeah, I like to fade. I would get haircuts and like it would look good for 3 days. And then like my hair would grow back so quickly that it just looked like garbage the rest of the time.
I used to do like full punk style spike, like all around. Like I would do, I had so much hair gel and hairspray in it. I did mohawks a couple times, but those were the days when you had options.
I didn't ever have long hair until COVID because I, like you, would get to that weird tweener stage and I'd just get rid of it. And then COVID happened and I just let it all go. And now here we are.
It's a wonderful decision.
You just got to fight through it. Give me a couple more months and I think I can join like an 80s hair metal cover band. If I could sing it all, that would be the move.
I think you're there. I think you're there right now. I think we need to do this.
I mean, Jed,
you some musical talent somewhere.
You have, I mean, you've turned babyface with this reveal of the hair. People have, people are.
Is that the case?
I mean, look at some of the comments. Like, you ride a stallion to the shower, Jed. Like, just all this. I mean, you are a babyface to the nines.
I was
A lot of
thinking about getting rid
Fabio.
of it. Maybe now I won't. If this is what gets the love, so it gets the people coming to MMAfighting.com. Great website.
One might call you the. It's just a stunning revelation. Maybe you're the
spectacular.
Long-haired Jed might be an enigma. Might be just this new mythical creature in MMA, much like Alex Pereira, Jed Meshew. Alex Pereira is kind of a mythical creature.
Look at that transition, Mike Heck.
Professional.
Oh, my God. That's why they pay him the big bucks.
Kind of a mythical creature, Jed. This man, I don't know how he makes 185. I don't know how he does it. There seems to be different stories and myths that follow this man around, and you kind of have to believe all of them. That's just sort of the resume, both in and out of the cage, that he sort of built for himself. But here we are, Jed Meshew, a man who is not typically a fan of immediate rematches. We're getting one here. We're a day away. UFC 287. We got Pereira, Adesanya, 4 or 2, however you want to slice it. 5 months after the last meeting, middleweight title on the line. So many storylines. Where are we at? A little over 24 hours away from this one.
Look, I'm still excited to watch the fight. It's a good fight. I was excited the last time. I still wish we weren't getting it now because I don't ever want to see an immediate rematch unless it's a trilogy bout. Like if they split the first 2, then fine, you can pull it, but that's the only exception I ever carve out. And there are some reasons which we may come across here, which are why. Like if Izzy wins this fight, and I'm sure we'll get into it, what comes next? But that's for later in the show. Right now, let's just talk about the fight on the merits. It's still a damn good fight. I have so many questions about what's going to happen. None of them are new, is the part of it that's insane. They're the exact same questions I had going into the third fight, the first MMA fight, however you want to couch it. Will Israel Adesanya continue to fight the way he seems to have adapted or adopted his style for MMA? Will he give ground to Alex Pereira the whole time and then just try and fight perfectly for 25 minutes? It's really hard to do that. He was doing well. I think some of the narrative has been a little bit overblown about how well he was doing in the first MMA fight. He was winning and up on the scorecards, but that fight was competitive, and he largely was as up as he was because of the third round where he got a takedown. He wasn't really looking for it. It just sort of happened. He wound up on top, and he, I think, proved conclusively he's superior grappler. Now, if that's going to be part of his game plan, I'm really interested. Is he going to try and shoot takedowns? Because we've seen that backfire for people. Thiago Santos gassed himself out shooting takedowns because that's not what he does. But Izzy had so much success there. Maybe he incorporates it this time. Most importantly, I just want to see if he fights him back. If Izzy's coming forward and trying to fight, like aggressively fight, he has a really good chance to win this fight. Can always get caught. It's Pereira. But if he doesn't, if he continues to give ground back to the fence, circle out, try and just be a leg kick merchant for 25 minutes, the same thing feels like it's going to happen again. So all of my questions are in approach. Where's his mind coming into this? How's he going to approach it? Because his coaches didn't really want him to do what he did last time. He got knocked out. Maybe this time he takes a lesson. So all of those same fascinating questions are there. And on top of it, we're stacking, can this man really go 4-0 against Israel Adesanya, which would be insane to think that anyone could go 4-0 over somebody this talented, this skilled, this good.
Shaheen, do you have any different questions for this one that you didn't have for UFC 281? Because I see Jed's case. Like, you could add a couple of wrinkles, but for the most part, stylistically, you sort of had the same questions you had back in November. But what are some other questions that you have, if you have any, compared to November?
I mean, it's just everything ramped up double, right? Like at this point, also, I have to say, someone in the comments said all Jed is missing now is a soul patch. And now I'm just visualizing that. And I really just need you bringing that energy to next week's show or something, however fast you can grow like a really sweet soul patch.
I arguably can't grow one at all, but we'll try. We'll do our best. I don't grow great facial hair. I've tried my whole life. It just doesn't really happen. But I agree, that would be a great look to pair here.
Well, the top of your head is overcompensating then because it's just tremendous. Can't get over it. No, man. I mean, this to me is just. I know a lot of people, maybe some people, didn't like the immediate rematch, didn't like sort of the way that the UFC handled this, but I actually really dig the whole situation, the whole setup that we have here. Izzy was such a dominant champion, and we've unanimously called him the second best middleweight of all time, pretty much just extensively throughout this run. And I mean, he deserves it, but also just at this point, I can't imagine someone that talented, as Jed just said, losing 4 times to the same guy in a way that this whole rivalry is so utterly bizarre, where I mean, we don't need to rehash because we've done it 1,000 times, but like every single one of these fights could have conceivably gone the other way very, very, very easily. Like this could be 3-0 in Izzy's favor, and we would never be talking about this. And yet here we are on this timeline, and just the way that Izzy has sort of approached this fight week and sort of the different version of Izzy that we've seen this fight week. I would say we've seen someone who's very focused, but also someone who's acutely aware of just sort of the situation that he's sort of found himself in, because he created this demon, right? Like he's the one who sort of poked the bear and continued to poke the bear and almost like convinced Alex to come try to do this and take away another thing from him. And then Alex, of course, does it. It's one of the weirdest rivalries I've seen in combat sports. I don't know that you can really call it a rivalry because it is so. Yeah, when it's 3-0, like, is that a rivalry? Like the Suns, lose to everybody for like a decade. I don't think we had rivalries at that point. We were just losing to them. So like, it's just a very bizarre situation. But it does seem, again, that Izzy is so acutely aware of sort of what the stakes are for this weekend, right? Because if he loses to Alex again, like, he could regain the championship maybe a year or two later with someone else beats Alex, maybe a wrestler, or Robert Whittaker comes in and does something and Izzy can beat Rob. But like, he's going to get Alex Pereira memes in his comments for the rest of his life. Like that dude is just going to follow him wherever he goes for the rest of his days in a way that is so profound and just so strange to like, this dude kicked you out of one sport. And now he came over here and he overthrew you in this one too. And it just like almost soiled your legacy in a weird way that is so unique. Like that is so imperative to avoid that if you're Israel Adesanya and not let yourself, again, it's just such a bizarre dynamic between these guys. But when have you really seen Izzy not have the upper hand mentally against anyone over his UFC run, right? Like we have consistently seen him against guys like Marvin Vettori or Robert Whittaker or Paulo Costa or whoever he's been going up against. He has had that mental edge. He has had that level of confidence, that level of like, well, guys, like I'm going to beat you. And I already beat you, that type of thing. Like that big brother mentality over a lot of these middleweights in this division. And you can see it this week. Like he very, very much does not have that against Alex Pereira. And it's just like, I can't imagine what's going through that guy's head if you feel so supremely confident that you're better than this one man and that you've almost shown it 3 different times, and yet you haven't shown it at all. And now the whole world is basically just ready to write you off. Like it is such a bizarre, unique, almost without parallel type of matchup that we have here. I find it utterly fascinating because the historical ramifications for a lot of this and just how we're going to think of Izzy moving forward, like a lot of it kind of depends on what happens on Saturday. And it's just a very unique situation.
It is. Pereira is just oozing confidence. Like it's just, he smiled a couple of times this week, which I didn't think we would ever see. The over-under is 0.5. A lot of people were taking the under. He smiled like 4 times this week, which is just something I didn't expect. But you did bring up a good point, Shaheen. I'll send it over to our armchair psychologist, Jed Meshew. What have you made of Israel Adesanya's mentality this week? The media day, the press conference. Some of the hits are continuously being played. Wore a dog collar to the press conference yesterday. Knew he would be asked about it. Had a line ready to go in response to said dog collar. But I thought the media day was pretty interesting and pretty fascinating. Just the focus in his eyes he just looked pissed. He looked pissed both days. But what have you made? This is a different kind of Israel Adesanya this week.
Can we all just acknowledge that the dog collar is the corniest shit that's happened this year? Like, come on, man. Like that is, and I've had less patience with it over time anyway, because it's hard for me to remember if he was always this way. I don't feel like he was when he was on the come up or whatever. I feel like he's always been a bit, likes anime and is a bit out there with his personal interests and in your face with it. And I respect that. I'm cool with that. I enjoy Naruto. That's cool. But it felt like particularly the last few fights where he lied a lot. He was like, I'm a vampire and I'm going to come eat him or whatever. And then he does the same dumb that's legitimately a thing he said before he fought Jared Cannonier. I'm a vampire and I'm ready for blood or some dumb. And then he did the same low kick merchant shit against Jared Cannonier. It's like, I don't know if this is who he's trying to sell, that he's a dog that needs to be let off the leash or whatever. But like, don't talk about it, be about it, bro. Like, let me see that in the cage. Bring that same energy to the actual fist fight, because I will be far more compelled. And like I said, I think he's got a way better chance than if he says, I'm a dog, need to be let off the collar, and then he's going to immediately back up to the fence and just jab and low kick a bunch. Like, it's just, it feels like he's trying so hard, and it's not just because it's the Pereira thing, because feels like he's been trying to do that same sort of thing before Pereira. But with Pereira, it feels even weaker because you don't have it. Like the whole media day press conference or whatever, I am a man with a bet on Israel Adesanya, a couple of bets on Israel Adesanya. I don't feel great about it. Like, armchair psychology could totally be wrong. We're going to find out on Saturday. We'll see. But it read to me very much like the false bravado, the false confidence Ronda Rousey brought to the Holly Holm fight. I am trying to sell myself on this idea. When he's talking about the fights and it's, well, I beat this guy 3 times. I just haven't beat him. That means you haven't beat him, dude. Like you have to be learning a lesson here. And a total lack of humility, which I don't necessarily think you need to be humble, but you could at least be honest, and instead of all the rest of it. So I have felt very off-kiltered by his approach this week. And again, maybe he knows something and he's right and I'm wrong. Totally could be possible. It will just be borne out on Saturday. But I don't like almost any of the pre-fight stuff. He was like mad during media day. Like, he was like at reasonable questions, or like questions that shouldn't elicit an anger response, to be like, I'm not going to answer that. He would just glare. I'm like, dude, who are you mad at? Because you're not mad at me, because I'm not the dude who's knocked you out 3 times. You're just mad at yourself that you're in this position. I don't know. He feels all over the map mentally coming into this, which is concerning for a man with multiple Izzy tickets.
Yeah. I don't know. The Ronda one is kind of interesting. I kind of had like McGregor Poirier 3 vibes almost in a weird way.
Okay. That feels closer to me than Ronda, because I've heard a couple people say the Ronda one, and I don't know that this feels like Ronda.
I'm happy to say that as well. Do we remember what happened in McGregor Poirier 3? It didn't go great. Like, it's the same sort of thing. Like, I don't know. And this is armchair psychology. This is all bullshit. We are all making things up. Could totally be wrong. But if not, come Sunday or the post show, I'm be like, yeah, all of the things I thought before feel vindicated in that.
Yeah, it's been an interesting part of this. And then Alex Pereira just loose as a goose, wearing these stellar suits, just having a good time, letting Glover Teixeira just prank the crap out of him. Oh, the Pikachu jacket's outstanding.
His A+ troll game has really been an underreported part of this whole situation between him and Izzy. Like, he is such a master troll on like levels that are like, it's absolutely
a perfect understanding. If you were trying to explain to somebody the difference between true confidence and bravado, like it's just those 2 dudes. Alex Pereira is the most confident man I've ever seen. And I don't think that this is him pumping him. Like, he knows it internally and doesn't have to say it. He's wearing a dog collar, ostentatiously wearing a dog collar to elicit the question, why are you wearing a dog collar? So he can say his corny ass canned line. Like, the vibes are very different, guys. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Shaheen, we have ourselves a very interesting position here, because you mentioned it. It's a lot on the line here for Adesanya. Like, a lot of it, and you can make different arguments, because Jed has talked about it before. It seems like Adesanya has a legacy that's pretty set right now. Like, second greatest middleweight of all time. Could that change over time, of course. But as of right now, if he were to lose this fight and just ride off into the sunset, he's the second greatest middleweight of all time, almost like Kamaru Usman heading into the rematch with Leon Edwards. But like you mentioned, Pereira is just sort of this looming shadow that could just hang over him forever. And that doesn't leave you. You could try to do other things and ignore it, but at the same time, that stuff's going to follow you everywhere. So, and then I think the fallout of this, especially on the Adesanya side, if he loses this fight, it's far more interesting storyline wise than leading into it, because what does this man do? Does he go to 205? Does he retire? Like, I've seen people suggest he might retire. Does he just sit and wait and hope Robert Whittaker beats Alex Pereira and win the belt? Like, what does he do, Shah? If Israel Adesanya loses this fight, if he goes out there and gets the doors blown off him, he gets finished in round 3, 4, 5, something weird happens, and he gets finished again by this man, where does Israel Adesanya go? Like, what do you think actually happens?
I mean, it's tough, right? Because we've already seen that 205 isn't really a viable option for him. I mean, he went over there and lost to Jan Blachowicz, and I don't think anybody's saying Jan Blachowicz was the second coming of John Jones. Like, the size is just going to be a struggle for him regardless up there. So I don't know, man. I mean, it's tough. It's really tough. I think if he loses, he's still someone who's 33 years old. He has a lot of mileage on him from kickboxing and et cetera, et cetera. Like, he's been in combat sports for a long time, but it doesn't feel like he's past it. Like, it still feels like we're very much in whatever the prime version of Israel Adesanya is. It's just, he's going to be stuck in that situation. He's going to be in the Joe Benavidez zone, right? At that point, like, it's just, you're the guy who could probably beat most of the people in that division, but whoever is the champion just has your number over and over and over again, to the point where we're just not going to see it again. We don't want to see it again. So if he loses, he's going to very much be stuck in that. Again, it's that Joseph Benavidez zone that Joe was in for most of his career after the DJ situation, where he's just fighting off these top contenders and having to almost be like the highest possible version of a gatekeeper imaginable to the championship window. Because, I mean, I don't think anybody out here is saying that Alex Pereira is the second coming to Anderson Silva, right? Like, Alex Pereira very much feels like a person who has a very specific set of skills, who has a very specific stylistic matchup that just matches up extremely perfectly with Israel Adesanya, but also someone who has a lot of holes, who could probably lose to at least 4 or 5 guys in this middleweight division. So it's not like Alex is going to be some long-reigning champion, I would say, at least. I mean, he's also sort of closer to 40 than he is to 30. But until he loses, he's that guy. So if you're Izzy, you almost have to just go and wait for, a Khamzat Chimaev to come in here and maybe do what you couldn't, or a Robert Whittaker or whatever, because then instantly Izzy's back in it, right? Like, Robert Whittaker comes in here, wins this fight against Alex, then Izzy obviously has the massive edge over Robert in that series, in the same way that Alex does on him. So he's just going to be stuck in waiting and having to file through these, almost like Max Holloway right now, if he loses. So, and that's not the spot you want to be, man, especially in the waning years of your prime. Like, that is a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, I mean, Whittaker matches up really well with Pereira, but who knows? Like, at this point, like, if Pereira goes out there and does it again, because I know a lot of people, and I think I might have even said this at one point, that after Johnny Eblen went out there and handled business in his last fight, I felt pretty confident that Johnny Eblen could beat Alex Pereira in a fight right now.
You mean,
but now I
number
don't know.
1 ranked middleweight in the world, Johnny Eblen?
I don't know if I feel that way right now. I just don't know, because Alex Pereira is just, again, he's a
scary
creature.
He's a scary man.
He's a frightening human being, and he's really good at hitting people really, really hard. So they fall down. It's just the guy's on him being, I don't know how he makes 185 pounds.
Summation of Alex Pereira. He is really good at hitting people hard. Just really good at it. It's what he does.
It's uncanny. It's uncanny. Jed, you wrote a wonderful Pass to Victory column for MMA Fighting, and you made an excellent point that, like, it doesn't even look like he's throwing hard.
He's the hardest puncher I've ever seen.
It's stupid. It does not make sense when you watch the visual of it, but the thud, like the actual sound that you can hear from these shots, is just, it's unbelievable, man. It's terrifying.
Yeah. That knockout he had in LFA, was one of the scariest knockouts I've ever seen. I thought he killed a guy. I thought he killed a guy with that knockout. I mean, I was frightened. I thought he really badly hurt somebody.
I've been saying it for a little bit now. I would like him to win, and I would like him. I know that Robert Whittaker deserves it, and that we should do that in general. I desperately want to watch Alex Pereira fight Dricus du Plessis, because
Oh
watching DDP throw his chin onto Pereira's punches would be among the funniest things I can really imagine in fight sport right now. Man, just charging into those hammers would be awesome.
Well, I mean, I feel like we've already sort of broken this fight down in so many different ways. So we might as well just get after it here.
4 times.
I know. In 4 months ago.
Point, what can you say? Like we've
What
just
else can you do?
if this plays out,
the fights haven't been different. They've all looked almost the same.
If this plays out the exact same with Israel coming up on the scorecards in a late round and Alex is just putting them away, like at that point, we just never I don't even understand how to talk about this rivalry at that point. Because like Izzy's the better fighter probably, but it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's crazy.
If the same thing happens again, I will totally know how this rivalry goes. Like that will just be okay. That's what will always happen because you can't be perfect for 25 minutes. It's impossible. And particularly like, honestly, Israel Adesanya was probably hurt by the fact that he was up 3 rounds to 1 because Pereira's corner was like, you have to go do this or you're going to lose. And he was like, all right, cool. I'll go forward real hard and try real hard this last round. And as soon as he did that, the fight was functionally over because Izzy was a little bit tired. His defense fell off. And had that been like a tighter fight, maybe Izzy could have, jabbed his way to a 5th round win and scooped the decision. But if you're ahead of Pereira, I said this to Mike on something this week. I thought we were talking about this week. Maybe it was last week. Pereira is not Jared Cannonier. He is not going to take a moral victory from losing. I made it to the fight. If he's down and he's just going to try harder, he's like, well, I guess I better go knock this dude out like I've done a bunch of times before. And so it becomes increasingly difficult to just play the safety first game at round over round. So if Izzy continues to approach this fight the same way, he's going to continue to get knocked out in later rounds the same way. So that's why that's my big question. If Izzy finally makes an adjustment, maybe something will happen different. If not, we're going to get the exact same outcome as we have been.
Well, let's just get after it right now. The challenger, Israel Adesanya, the -140 favorite, the comeback on the champion, Alex Pereira, +120, according to our friends at DraftKings. Shaheen Al-Shatti, who leaves Miami, Florida, the middleweight champion of the world.
God, those odds are just so perfectly representative of exactly what this rivalry is. Because I can't imagine any other scenario where a guy beats another guy 3 times, and in the 4th fight, he's still the underdog. Like, this is such a bizarre situation, man. I can't get over how strange this is. It goes back to what we were saying at the top. As good of a fighter as Israel Adesanya is, I just can't imagine him losing 4 times to the same guy. Like, that's just a clean sweep. Like, you're just gonna that doesn't make sense to my mind. Like, especially the way that these have played out, I could look extremely stupid at the end of this because if Alex just goes out there and does what he's already done 3 times, like what are we even talking about? But I have to side with Israel just because I truly would be stunned if someone like him lost 4 times to the same man. It feels like at some point something's got to give. Maybe he can, go to his wrestling a little more. I agree with what we were talking about a little bit earlier in this conversation, that I don't think that could be the sole focus of the game plan because that's just simply not what he does. But also we've seen Francis Ngannou wrestle his way to a title defense as well. So you never know, and adjustments can be made on the fly. I lean Izzy, but I think it might be one of my stupidest picks ever. And it's also the definition of insanity of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Like, I'm going to pick Israel Adesanya. I'm going to say maybe a late round stoppage. He can figure out something to work against Alex Pereira that hasn't so far. But also I could be the stupidest person in the world right now doing that. I don't know.
I feel like that could be a common theme with a lot of these fights, honestly, that you just have like a specific read on things and then you could just look like a complete fool when it's all said and done. But Jed is cracking up.
I love Shaheen's breakdown because I feel so much of it. It's like, I'm going to do the dumb thing because in my lizard brain looks at this. And this is how Vegas turned a little spit in the middle of the desert into what it is. Idiots like me who are like, well, that can't keep happening. Surely the same thing won't continue to happen over and over again.
It's been red 4 times in a row. It can't possibly be red again.
This time it's going to be black. Look at the board. It's been 5 reds in a row. Can't do it. This time it'll be black. And then you put a lot of money on it and you lose it because you're an idiot. And that's where I am right now, because surely these 2 guys who are very evenly matched up one guy can't go 4-0. He can't do a clean sweep. That's just statistically unlikely. I have chosen to talk myself into the belief that this time Israel Adesanya, what's the old saying? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, I'm a freaking moron. So if you fool me a 4th, holy shit, I'm stupid, I think is how it goes. I think Izzy is going to finally take a lesson, and he is going to come out and push Pereira back. Now, there's always a chance Pereira knocks you out. It's Alex Pereira. He's the hardest hitting dude I may have ever seen pound for pound. So that could still happen. But I think either way, we're going to get a quicker resolution. Twice before, Izzy has severely hurt Pereira in the first round and was unable to finish due to time constraints, standing at count, etc. I'm picking a first-round Israel Adesanya KO. Don't feel great about it. Could look like a huge, huge moron come Sunday. But that's where I'm at.
First round, eh?
I think this time, because I think if he's allowed to settle in at all, Izzy will just revert to who he is and give ground, and then that's just bad. I think the whole camp, the plan is you come out, you put Pereira on his heels, you get after him. And if that happens, I think Pereira's just going to start firing back, and we're going to get a real exchanges a la Rob Izzy the first fight when they were just kind of chucking after it. And I like Izzy's chances to get him out of there if that's what goes down.
Yeah, I was talking about this on the weigh-in show earlier. This, to me, like if you're Adesanya's side, it's almost like I feel like he has to approach it like it's the rematch between Rocky Balboa and Clubber Lang, where like Clubber just deaded him at the beginning of Rocky 3, and then the game plan was, Rock, you gotta unload the clip for 3 rounds. Just get after him and just throw everything you have for 3 rounds and get after him. And then, of course, he goes out there and gets him out of there in 3 rounds because he just throws the kitchen sink at him and empties the entire clip in hopes of knocking this man out who was indestructible prior to that. And that's what he did. So I guess I'm as dumb as you guys. I'm picking Adesanya as well.
There's a whole group of morons, just a pack of imbeciles.
I feel even worse about my picks now.
Oh, God.
Idiots.
I don't know.
Commit to it. You already said it. Just commit.
No, I know. I'm there. This fight, what I was going to say is this fight is going to be the fight of the night. I think they're going to beat the shit out of each other. I don't think this is going to be a technical chess match. I think they're going to get after it and someone's going down. And I think the way Adesanya is probably going to approach this fight, at least the way I look at it, I think he's going to be okay with how this thing ends. Like maybe he'll be a meme, but I think he's just going to get after it. And if he falls and goes down in an aggressive fight, I think he'll be able to live with himself. Because I honestly think this is his best chance of winning the fight. Again, I'm not talking Pedro Munoz just punched Cody Garbrandt in the face and it turned on the switch of absolute insanity, and then Garbrandt gets deaded. But he's got to go after him. He's got to try to put Pereira on the back foot. And at the same token, Pereira needs to put Adesanya on the back foot. And I just think these two dudes are going to collide until one man falls down. And I think Adesanya is going to win in the third. And I don't love that pick. I don't love it. I cannot
believe this. How are we all doing this?
All of us.
How are we all doing this again? This is ridiculous.
Because four is so many.
Four is so many.
So many.
I've been leaning towards Izzy since this fight got booked for the simple reason of he can't possibly do this for a 4th time. And as this has gotten closer during this week and seeing Izzy, have you guys grown more and more? I guess less and less is what I mean.
No, I feel
less
way
confident
less good.
because I feel so supremely less confident after seeing just the dynamic at play this week.
I said it at the top. I picked Pereira last time. For all the reasons we functionally talked about. And this time I was like, I'm just going to pick Izzy because, I don't know, vibes. And then the vibes were off as soon as he started talking. I was like, oh, God, I don't like this at all. But
I'll tell you what, if Pereira wins, I'm picking Pereira in the 5th fight. So don't worry about it. This will be, I won't fall for it again. I will tell you that right now. But the co-main event.
I have a question before we move on because I genuinely don't know. Which is the funnier of these two potential scenarios? Either the exact same fight happens again and Izzy gets knocked out in the 5th after being ahead. Is that funnier? Or is it funnier if this time Izzy takes the lesson, comes forward, does all the things everybody's been begging him to do, and still gets knocked out? I don't know which of those is funnier. They're
certainly.
both
Oh, it's the
hilarious.
first. It's the first
It's the
one.
former,
You think-
easily. Yeah.
I don't know. I think they're both hilarious.
To me, the second funniest outcome of this fight is that it's just the most boring, most point fightiest fight that we have ever seen in history. That it's Izzy Yoel again, and that's how he finally gets.
Oh my God! Don't put that out there. Don't put that out there.
I just don't think that could happen because Alex Pereira wouldn't let that happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pereira won't let it be that.
But that is by far the second funniest outcome of this. Is to say, "Oh, I finally got you," and it's just like Rose Carla 2 levels of bad.
See, I would say I don't think that'll just be sad because Izzy will for sure celebrate that as if he climbed.
You'll be Tommy Fury
Everest.
out there, yeah, just acting like
I got you with
biggest
my
moment of
split
life.
decision win by leg kicks. Yeah, bum, you're a bum. Let the dog off the collar. Okay, dude, chill.
And the third funniest outcome would be Pereira winning the fight until the 5th round, and Adesanya knocks out Pereira in the 5th round. Now that would be some freaking kismet right there.
Also, if Izzy shoots a takedown and Pereira guillotines him, that would be pretty hilarious too.
Wow.
Let's not lie to ourselves.
Go-goes
There are a
them.
lot of
Just
there are
straight
like
go-goes them
12
out of here.
possible hilarious outcomes for this fight.
Pulls out the first Peruvian necktie in a UFC title fight ever or something.
Now we're talking.
I would honestly
we're
just quit
talking.
watching because we peaked. We're not doing
that's
better
it.
than that.
We're done. Co-main event, we have Gilbert Burns, the biggest favorite on the entire card, taking on Miami's own Jorge Masvidal. This entire card is built around him. At this point, the fans are going bananas for him. It just feels like a Masvidal homecoming. But here we are, Shaheen. Jorge Masvidal, co-main event, biggest dog on the card to Gilbert Burns, which to me is a very stunning revelation, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But what are we thinking here? We got Gilbert Burns, we got Jorge Masvidal, a fight that we thought after Leon Edwards defeats Kamaru Usman again at UFC 286, this fight had all the stakes, everything was on the line, and then Dana White immediately shut that down and has continued to do so. Has this fight lost luster? I guess is the question I'm going to ask. Like, now that we're a day away, does it just feel like it's just kind of the next level above Kevin Holland and Santiago Ponzinibbio, with them not really fighting for anything at this point?
Why are you always starting to start trouble? Why are you always trying to start trouble out here, Mike Heck? Dana White's shutting down a lot of stuff. What was that press conference? Like, I know that's not what you asked me, but like, what are we here to do if you're not going to let these dudes talk to each other? That was one of the most bizarre press conferences I've ever seen, just from a UFC standpoint. What did you ask me? What was the question?
Has this fight lost steam since it was announced, and since UFC 286 and the doubling down, the tripling down, and then the quadrupling down in front of Jorge Masvidal and Gilbert Burns yesterday?
In front of a booing audience too. Like, it's just the level of read the room when it comes to a lot of this is lacking severely. I say it's lost a little bit of steam, right? Because this could feel bigger than it does if from the moment Leon Edwards put the capstone on his trilogy with Kamaru Usman, we have been hearing nothing but, hey, Jorge Masvidal, Gilbert Burns, the winner of this could get this next title shot. You got to come out here, do something impressive, earn your title shot, show us why you should get it. If we've just been hearing that sort of rhetoric from the UFC over the last several weeks, like, this definitely would feel bigger, right? Like, this would feel like, oh man, this is Jorge's last shot. This is Gilbert's maybe one shot to sort of get back in this opportunity to skip the line. Like, we would be talking about this in a vastly different way rather than like, oh, well, this is just weird. Let's talk about some conspiracies of why this is still happening in the way that it is. So yeah, I mean, it's sort of unfortunate that this has been under promoted in the way that it has, but also, I mean, what from the moment this fight was first conceived, first talked about, first, booked, everything, there's a reason Jorge is the biggest underdog on the card, right? Because I think to a lot of people, myself included, this feels very one-sided. This feels like, well, I have a pretty good sense of how this is going to go. And if these dudes fought 10 times, pretty sure one guy's going to win 9 of them. And so, I mean, that in and of itself maybe puts the fight a little bit lower in sort of the, hype levels. But then again, I mean, anything can happen. It's Jorge Masvidal in Miami, right? Like, we've seen crazier things. It's hard for me to get past the fact that this is a 38-year-old man at this point who has been doing this for a very long time and has a ton of mileage on him. And like, we have seen peak Jorge Masvidal. So whatever he does at this point will just be extra. But this is a very interesting fight to me. This is still a quality fight. And I still, like, regardless of the rhetoric, if Jorge Masvidal goes out there and Ben Askren's Gilbert Burns, like he's gonna get that title shot unless the UFC just absolutely has this deal with Colby Covington regarding dropping the lawsuit and will give you a title shot, just some sort of under the table type of thing. Like at that point, it will be undeniable unless that is the case. So this is still a very intriguing fight to me, but it certainly could be much, much more going into it if we had been properly, if it had been properly put on the pedestal that you was just right there that they could have easily done.
Jed, to me, and I've talked about this a lot, and I think you've talked about this as well, I think the betting lines suck in this one. I think it is way too wide. I think Masvidal has a much better chance than people are giving him, than the betting odds are certainly suggesting right now. I think stylistically, people are just forgetting that Masvidal does things defensively pretty damn well. A lot, when you talk about Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington, the two best welterweight wrestlers in the division, Gilbert Burns is not these guys. Like, he's not Usman. He's certainly not Colby when it comes to chaining a bunch of takedowns together. Unless Gilbert Burns has suddenly become the second coming of Merab Dvalishvili, I just think this fight is much more competitive than the betting odds suggest. This plus 360 on Masvidal seems like the biggest value on the entire card. That's, to me, what are you thinking? I feel like this is a much more competitive fight than people think it is.
Fully with you. Talked about it on No Bets Barred this week. I'm picking Gilbert Burns to win this fight, but plus three, the odds are at basically saying Jorge Masvidal has a 20% chance to win, and that just feels low. Like I think he's got a better than 20% chance for the stuff he touched on. Like I think people have a bad a conception of what Jorge Masvidal is as a fighter in general, because what he did to get up to stardom and the title shot is not really who he is as a fighter. It was just sort of a contained run and some matchups that worked. He's a very good defensive fighter. He's an excellent defensive fighter. He's a really good defensive wrestler. I'm sure the comments are like he gave up 1 million takedowns. Yeah, to Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington. Also, he gave up 1 million takedowns while defending twice as many of them. Like that, both of those dudes scored takedowns at like a 33% clip, which is in general not all that high as far as takedown attempt success goes. And Gilbert Burns is not Jorge Masvidal, Kamaru Usman. I think Burns is going to win this fight because Masvidal historically has allowed people to simply outwork him. He gets a little too caught up minding his defense and not minding his own offense. I think particularly given the Miami crowd, when he is firing back at Burns, he is going to be throwing heat. He's going to be trying to take his freaking head off. And I don't know if that's good or bad. Honestly, I'm not really sure how that will play out because Burns has proven to be really tough. Like he's been finished, but he's also, he went hammer and tongs with Hamzat Chimaev for 15 minutes. So I don't think Burns is going to get repeated takedowns. He might get to the floor at one point, but Masvidal is a really good defensive grappler, pretty good at getting back up to his feet. Burns isn't going to put the Colby Covington chain of takedowns on him that is going to smother Masvidal like that. And so I think we're looking at a lot of a kickboxing fight. And again, I favor Burns' aggression, his forward pressure, his willing to seize the initiative, whereas Masvidal will let fights come to him. But I think he's going to have his moments. And I think he's got a way better than 20% chance to win this. And I would say that I think we've got a chance of this looking like more of an old school Masvidal fight where he loses a split decision but feels like he did better because he had much better defense than Gilbert Burns did, but he just doesn't land enough offense to sway the judges. I think this fight's really competitive for a lot of it. So, or at least maybe I'm again talking myself into that because he's got great hair. But Gilbert Burns' hair, he's coming just
tremendous.
Arguably the best hair on the whole card. And I thought Masvidal for sure would have had that a lot coming into it. And then Burns shows up with that. And it's tough. Also, don't know. I didn't look at the weigh-in, so maybe you guys can tell me if I'm wrong. The UFC.com photo of Jorge Masvidal looking a little soft. Not looking like prime peak condition Jorge Masvidal, which is potentially worrisome. So we'll see. I didn't look at the weigh-ins. I don't know if he looks soft on the scale or not, but concerning certainly for Masvidal backers like myself.
Were you concerned, Shaheen? Did you see something from Masvidal that didn't look right. He's never been a real body guy.
Yeah.
Like Masvidal's never been a six-pack kind of a dude.
No, but he hadn't been.
Especially at 170. Like I feel like he's sort of looked that way at most of his 170 run, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't notice it before, but he just looked a little soft.
Fair enough. Listen, he's 38. We can't all age as graceful as Gilbert Burns, who
Yeah,
somehow
there they are, Mike.
I mean, yeah, they're right there. Gilbert Burns looks 10. Shaheen, Gilbert Burns somehow looks 10 years younger. He looks 10 years younger with the hair and the overalls, and he like his face. It's like he lost wrinkles from his face. He looks 10 years younger. He looks like Raul Rosas Jr. in a way. He looks like the second youngest fighter on the freaking card. It's unbelievable. But right now, Gilbert Burns minus 450, plus 360 on Jorge. Can the youth get it done? I guess is the big question, Shaheen.
This stuff just slays me. I cannot. This is why with the Jed thing, with like letting your hair go, like if you have such tremendous hair as Gilbert clearly does, the afro looks incredible. How can you possibly hide that? Like, why would you hide that? That's such a disservice to people like me and you, Mike, to hide that for as long as it's the GSP thing, where like GSP was bald for like my entire existence of knowing him, and then all of a sudden he retires and he has like this lavish head of hair, and it's just, where was this all of this time? Are you kidding me? You've been hiding this from everybody. I'm a little upset that we didn't get this Gilbert Burns afro earlier, because I agree. I mean, that's like +5 on your speed and power in your chin just right there by putting that afro up. No, I mean, ultimately, this fight feels to me. I know I agree that maybe it's a little more competitive than people are pitting it, because it does feel like people have more or less kind of given up on Jorge Masvidal. He lost back-to-back to Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington. That's not the worst thing in the world, but even us, I mean, as a website, we don't have Jorge Masvidal ranked as a top 15 welterweight. Feels like people have just kind of written him off, and maybe that's why this line is where it is, and sort of the breakdown is coming from a lot of people. But ultimately, I have supreme confidence in Gilbert Burns. I believe Gilbert Burns is legitimately still one of the best welterweights in the world, and I think that's just where it comes down to, is one of these guys is the best welterweights in the world, and one of them is not right now. And so ultimately, I side with Gilbert, but it is what it is.
What do we think, Jed? I know you're picking Burns, but does he get him out of there? Is this going to the cards? What do we think?
Oh, cards. I think they're both really durable. If there's going to be a finish, it will be for Jorge Masvidal. I mean, Masvidal, the last time he was, outside of the Usman one shot incredible KO, it was Toby Amata. Like he's not getting finished. I just doubt Gilbert Burns can get him out of there. So I'm taking Burns by decision, but again, I think this is a fairly competitive fight.
I came into this week feeling pretty, not confident, but I came into this week ready to slide in picking Jorge Masvidal. I was feeling like Masvidal could go in there and actually win this fight. And then he said something that gave me pause. If I lose this one, it's probably it.
That concerned me.
That concerned me. Even though stylistically, I still think this is going to be a competitive fight. I can't pick Masvidal. I just can't. So I will go with Gilbert Burns winning, kind of like what Jed said, a very competitive decision. I think Masvidal will have his moments. I think this one in some way could have some Leon Edwards, Nate Diaz vibes to it. Not to the same extent. I think it's more competitive as a whole than that fight. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. I think what Burns does well, Masvidal defends pretty well. I think most of this fight plays out on the feet. I think Masvidal has his moments. I think Burns probably has more. And I think Burns just lasts a little bit longer. I think down the stretch, that's when Burns will kind of pull away here. I think it's kind of like a 1-1 fight heading into the third. Burns comes out and wins like the first 3 minutes and 50 seconds of round 3. And then Masvidal has a nice moment at the end. And there we are. So I think it's a fight. Burns wins. We're going to look back. Most pundits are going to be like, wow, that was much closer of a fight than I thought it was going to be. But I do think Burns will eke it out. So that's where I'm at. I don't like the I have 1 foot out the door stuff. It gives me too much pause. So that's
I don't like that. I don't like that all three of us agreed on everything. It feels like we're just setting ourselves up to look very dumb.
All right. Well,
that's my corner. Looking dumb is where I thrive, Shaheen.
Not with that hair, Shed. Not with that hair. When you make predictions of that hair, you cannot look bad. You cannot. The Bald brothers, I'm gonna have to come back and humble myself. But people are just gonna forget. People are gonna totally forget what you said because that hair is just flowing. Just get a fan.
Mythical
Get a fan.
MMA fighting staffer, just untamed.
Maybe
Jed
I'll get
Meshew.
a fan for tomorrow too, so I can have the open Miami shirt billowing. Just going, it'll be great. Great vibes all around.
All right. Well, before we take a couple questions from the peeps, the chats have been kind of grumpy since the weigh-ins, but here we
I have
are.
a question for y'all that I don't know if I've ever noticed this, and it's not really relevant, but a little bit. Have you ever been on the UFC's website about the fight thing? They have weights listed, and it's not the competition weight. Do they weigh them like when they get there on fight week?
What do you mean? They have like fight night weights listed?
Like one championship style?
I mean, well, right now, if you look at the main card, it says that Alex Pereira weighs 206.4 pounds and Izzy weighs 199 pounds. That's under their breakdown of the listing of all of the record and fights and where they're at. And they've got weights that they're not the competition weight, clearly.
Interesting.
So I don't know. I've never noticed this or seen this before. And it wouldn't totally shock me if they did like a cursory weigh in the fight week when they got there, but I don't remember that being like a thing. I bring it up largely because, one, I kind of would have anticipated Pereira being a little bit bigger than 206, but two, the biggest gap is between Raul Rosas Jr. and Christian Rodriguez, because it says Raul Rosas Jr. is 141.8 and Christian Rodriguez is 154.6. So that's a big gap if that's what I think this is.
I need to check that out. I've never heard of that or seen that.
I'd never seen it before, but I'm on the UFC's 287 page, and
wow,
all of the weights are different. So something I was just curious. Didn't know if you guys knew.
If I would actually be less shocked if you said Pereira's weight was like 246 than him being 206.
Yeah, 206 feels lighter than I would have thought. But if he's,
oh yeah,
I mean the rumors were that he's been cutting weight for 2 weeks. That he's been already working his way down because it's such a big cut. So
yeah, you're right. They have it for everybody.
Gilbert's
they have for everybody,
and it's none of their competition weight.
Masvidal's 184. What is this?
Wow.
Now
you might have just discovered something, Jed.
Maybe I did. I really want to know why Christian Rodriguez is 15 pounds heavier than Rosas Jr. if that's the case, because that's awesome.
Well, Christian missed weight today. He missed weight for his Contender Series fight.
If I got to tell you, if he's walking around at 155 and they weigh him on fight week and he's got to cut 20 pounds as a bantamweight, it's not shocking that he missed weight.
Wow. There you go. Something to
weigh and check it.
That's something we get that might be a nice little betting addition, Jed.
This would be a huge addition to my gambling acumen if this is a thing that I never knew existed.
Wow.
Everybody else's weight looks pretty normal. About what you'd expect.
All right. What's the low-key banger, Shaheen? What's the low-key banger? I think the main card's pretty damn good. If you want to take some of that low-hanging fruit, it's cool. It's all good. But I mean, what's the low-key banger? I feel like under these two fights, you could make a case that all of these fights are low-key bangers.
I think the stock answer is Yanez Font, right? Because it
doesn't even feel low-key.
Yeah, that's not low-key, right?
That's the fight of the night.
Might be that dude. There's a very real world where all of a sudden Adrian Yanez is UFC champion within the next 2 years. It kind of feels like that. I'm super, super intrigued with that fight. But ultimately, if you want to go a little bit further down the card, I would say either Gastelum, Curtis, but I still don't want to even kind of talk about that fight because I just don't want to put the jinx on Kelvin Gastelum, who's seeming like one of the unluckiest men in the UFC right now. So I'll go even further down, and I'll look at that Gerald Meerschaert, Joe Pfeiffer fight. Because Gerald is the perfect, I love everything about this matchmaking. Gerald is the perfect sort of prove it level of opponent for him. He's spoiled so many different parties in the past with the UFC of trying to, hey, if you can beat Gerald Meerschaert, you're probably one of the guys that we're going to start talking about as somebody that matters. But also, it's not really easy to beat Gerald Meerschaert. A lot of people have tried and failed. I love that. And also the story of Joe Pfeiffer, obviously, we don't need to rehash it, but just overcoming homelessness, troubled youth, dude was basically going to be out in the streets if Dana White didn't pay for his rent the whole time, and then comes in here. Also the Contender Series injury that he dealt with, and then comes in here and just has a supremely violent UFC debut. Like middleweight's in a really interesting place right now, obviously with Izzy and Alex and everything we're doing there, but also there's just like a lot of new infusion of talent that's coming into middleweight, whether it's a Bo Nickel, whether it's probably a Hamzat Shemaev, whoever you want to throw in there. I wouldn't say Joe Pfeiffer is at the level of those guys, but he is, and he could be seemingly another intriguing young name to sort of throw into the mix that we haven't had him sort of playing around in those waters yet. So I have my eyes locked in on that fight. I love the matchmaking in that. And I wouldn't be surprised if Joe Pfeiffer ends up being somebody for real, you know?
What's yours, Jed?
I don't think that's going to be a fight of the night just because I kind of think Joe Pfeiffer's going to knock him out. Because Joe Mearshardt's real good at being scrappy, but if he's not, he's real good at getting knocked out. I'm going to go Shailen Nerdenbiecki, however the hell, I'm sorry. I don't know how to do that. My bad. Hand up. Versus Steve Garcia on the early prelims. Just because Steve Garcia is really good at getting got. Like 8 of his last 10 fights or something been finished or gotten finishes. I know Shailen has had a lot of decisions in the UFC, but prior to Jordan, I mean, he's like, I think this is his 50th fight. Dude's been fighting for a long time, and most of those did not go to decision. So I think hype Miami crowd. Hopefully it'll be hype. We'll see how that, certainly the early prelims look. But I think that's probably the best bet for something that's both under the radar and really fun.
I like it. I'm picking the main event to be the fight of the night just because I think it's going to be crazy. I think it's going to be a lot more ruckus than the 281 fight. I think Raul Rosas Jr., Christian Rodriguez is going to be really, really fun. Like, I think that's going to be a really fun fight because if there's one thing we know about the UFC and their matchmakers is if they have their eyes on somebody and they want to develop them in a certain way, there's nobody better than the UFC at this. When they have an eye, when they're told, hey, this is our plan, we want to bring this guy in and eventually want this guy to fight this guy for the title, they will find a way to get it done and make it look good. So I feel like this matchup is here for a reason. I feel like Raul Rosas Jr. versus Christian Rodriguez is here to start off the main card because they think Raul Rosas Jr. is going to run over Christian Rodriguez. And that might happen. I'm just not convinced that's going to happen since, again, I know we have a running joke on MMAfighting.com. He's not Raul Rosas Jr. He's 18-year-old Raul Rosas Jr. That's how we call him. And that has to factor into stuff. And Christian Rodriguez, despite not having his weight management where it needs to be in this division and in this organization, he is a scrapper, man. And he is a scrambler, and he's a really solid, fun grappler. And I think there could be the chance that Raul Rosas Jr. gets this cool ovation. He gets over like Rover, and he's just going to want to do something cool, like really, really cool. Maybe he fights out of himself, like outside of himself a little bit, and Christian Rodriguez takes advantage. I do ultimately think Raul Rosas Jr. is going to get Christian Rodriguez out of there by the 3rd round. But I think before that, maybe Raul he's like, wow, look at all these people. They like me. They really like me. And he starts doing things a little bit cray. And Christian's going to be like, all right, let's do that. And then Raul's going to realize, all right, let's just get him out of there. So I think that could be a really fun fight. I think that could be a really, really fun fight. I do like the GM3 Joe Pfeiffer fight as well. Let me ask you this, Jed, as one of our betting analysts. You know how Makwan Amirkhani is like the ultimate live bet guy? Like if a Makwan Amirkhani fight gets out of the 1st round, you just unload the clip on his opponent because you know what's about to happen. Would it be a smart betting strategy to not put any money on Joe Pfeiffer, Gerald Meerschaert at all? But if Pfeiffer and Meerschaert gets to round 2, maybe we put a little sprinkle on Gerald Meerschaert because that line's going to be up there. And I feel like if this fight, because there's a world
veteran savvy, little.
I think
where you're coming from.
Pfeiffer has a lot of 1st-round KOs too. He's
I feel like if he doesn't get Meerschaert out of there in the first 5 minutes, that Gerald's going to beat him.
I could see it. I don't know. I just am betting Joe Pfeiffer because I think he's going to knock out Gerald Meerschaert because Gerald Meerschaert is just one of those dudes for me that I'm just never going to respect. I don't know why. He's clearly not a bad fighter, but
he's on a good run too. He's on a nice little run.
He is on a good run. Honestly, it is probably because he talked a whole bunch of stuff and then got deaded by Hamzat with literally the first punch. And that just ruins you for me as a fighter forever. I was like, I respected what you were saying, Gerald. That's the right attitude to have. Literally getting colded by the first punch is a tough scene. Tough scene. So, and I know he's 4-1 since then. Obviously a good fighter. I think Joe Piper's going to knock him out. But I don't hate your thought, particularly with how unproven Piper is. So I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, I feel like Mearshart, if this gets extended, it favors him a lot more. So, all right, let's take a few questions. This is should be a fun card. We'll start with Tristan. If Chris Curtis KOs Kelvin Gastelum, is he going to be just a tough out in that middleweight division as he moves up in the rankings? So, tough fight to call, Shaheen Al-Shatti. I think this is about as close as it gets. I think this is the closest line fight on the entire card right now. Kelvin Gastelum, the slight favorite, -130. Comeback Chris Curtis +110. But if Curtis just goes out there and knocks out Kelvin Gastelum, how will you feel about his future at 185, Shaheen?
There's a right answer to this. I'm excited. I hope you get it right, Shaheen.
I don't know that changes how I feel about his future. I mean, I don't know that I think of Kelvin Gastelum in that way anymore. To me, this fight is more about like, is Kelvin Gastelum still matter? Almost in a way, right? Like, is Kelvin Gastelum still someone who matters in this middleweight division? Dude has what's the run he's on at this point? 5 out of 6. Yeah, he's lost 5 out of 6, and that one that he won was Ian Heinisch, and it's not a decision that anybody's going to go back and watch anytime soon. The fall has been precipitous, and I mean, at this point, if you go 1-6 over 7, like, I think it's hard to come back from that. Whereas Chris Curtis is a very fun story. I love him a lot as a person. I think he's very cool personality to have in the sport, and I'm glad he's here. And I feel like he's probably going to be putting on bangers for us in this middleweight division for a while and being someone in that top 10, top 15 range. I don't know that I see him ever ascending above that, but if he wins this fight, it will just, keep him, I would say almost like keep him in his spot at this point. This feels more like there's a lot more at stake for Kelvin than Chris.
Jed, is that the correct answer?
It's not the right answer. I mean, a lot of what he said's okay. I'm not sure Shaheen read the question, is the point. Can you bring the question back up, Mike? There's a very important factor in the question that Shaheen didn't address at all. It's not if he beats Kelvin Gastelum. It's if he KOs Kelvin Gastelum. I'm not sure that anyone can KO Kelvin Gastelum. This man is right there with Marvin Vettori. If you gave me a baseball bat and I had to fight him, I would not feel good about my odds because I don't think I can knock this dude out. If Chris Curtis comes here and knocks out Kelvin Gastelum, I will think worlds different about what he can do in this division because that means he can knock out anybody. Anybody can get it at that point if Chris Curtis can body up Kelvin. Now, I agree with Shaheen all the rest of the way on if we're just talking about this being a win. If he just goes and wins, yeah, he's just going to be a tough out. He's going to be a middleweight, man. Fighting a lot of dudes, winning most of them, just kind of getting after it. But if he goes and slabs up Kelvin, it's going to completely redefine what I think this man is capable of, even at 37 years old or whatever Chris Curtis is. So if he does that, it would be one of the most shocking things of all the outcomes that could theoretically happen on this card. Kelvin Gastelum getting bagged up is right near the top of my list of things that I would find unbelievable.
I have to push back. I have to push back on something.
Love it.
Mike you are the king of this. You are the gatekeeper when in terms of letting someone into the club or not. Chris Curtis does not belong in the middleweight conversation to me. He feels like he's like a fun guy. Like he has personality. He's going out there. He's not really putting on point fights. He's not trying to wrestle people. I don't know. He feels to me like he ascends above the middleweight conversation. You tell me, Mike. Am I off?
I mean, I think kind of where he's ranked right now, he's still sort of in the picture. But remember this, Shaheen. We live in a world where a couple of weeks ago, at this time, we didn't think Chidi and Njokuani would ever be considered for the middleweight conversation, like ever in the history of the division and this concept. And what happened? He is now like the vice president of the middleweights. Thank you to Albert Duraev for that. But he is a middleweight now officially because of Albert Duraev. So I'm not ruling him out. Having said that, if I'm keeping him in this, he's kind of like the Justin Gaethje of the middleweights right now. Like, and I mean that in I mean that is he's the most exciting middleweight, but he still is a middleweight. He's
I
no
think
Alex.
There's a lot of
Hermansson-
levels to this comparison at
there's-
this point right now, and I'm trying to parse it. I'm not
That's
sure
the
I can get
club.
there.
I mean, that's the club, man. It's not easy to get
Look,
into.
Just think of Jack Hermansson. That's the middleweight. Like Jack Hermansson is my idyllic version of a middleweight.
Yeah, Christoph Jokto, like
guys who
Marv-
can do a little bit of everything, aren't super good at anything, and they alternate wins and losses.
Marvin Vittori
He's the
is
king.
like he is the guy.
He's Shao
He's the
Kahn.
king.
He's Shao
Yeah,
Kahn of the whole situation.
He's the platonic ideal of it. Like he's elevated. Like he is. I'm trying to think of like if you took fast food and the chefs who like elevate McDonald's and define cuisine or whatever. Like that's what Marvin Vittori is.
Yeah, he's the final
middleweights.
boss.
The
And
best.
meanwhile, like Alex Pereira is so like a separate stratosphere from this middleweight conversation. Like it's just like whatever the polar
he could knock out
opposite of that
Kelvin
is.
Gastelum. I believe Pereira could knock out Kelvin Gastelum.
Better question:
If
Pereira
anyone
knock
can
out
do it.
Marvin Vittori?
Yes, I think he
agree.
can. I don't know that he would, but I think he can.
Jed, this might be this question is right up your alley.
Is it
How will Adesanya be remembered if he loses to Alex, moves up to 205, wins the belt, and then Alex moves up and beats him for the 5th time at 205?
Is that the new funniest outcome? Because that might be one of the funnier outcomes.
It's definitely the actual funniest outcome that could ever happen would be that. It would just be pristine. I doubt it'll happen. That's the thing. I don't think Izzy can move up to 205 if he loses because of that exact concern. Because one, if he moves up, he doesn't get an immediate title shot. If he's the champion, then he can maybe leverage that.
Really?
No. 205 has a lot of other stuff going on right now.
You think they're going to give Magomed Ankalaev a title shot over Israel Adesanya? Like if
I think we're getting Jamal Hill versus Yuri sometime in September probably.
But who knows when? You know, like that's
but in the between time, Anthony Smith's going to fight again. Magomed, Jan, Rakic, they're all going to fight.
He's a bigger name than all of them. If he wanted it, they would give him that title shot.
I think they will. I think because he already had one and lost it, he will have to fight a fight to get a title shot at 205. And so, I mean, maybe he can do it, but at any point in time, Alex Pereira it is not a question of when he goes to 205 or if, it is when he goes. It's going to happen. It probably happens soon. I personally think that the actual funniest outcome would be Pereira beating Izzy and then just moving up. Just be like, I'm done here. I don't really want to fight Robert Whittaker. I'd rather go fight Jamal Hill for the light heavyweight belt, which would be incredible. And then Izzy's just back here. I think Izzy's sort of stuck at 185, which is fine. Like there are other fights he can take at 185 and they'll be interesting. But yes, it would objectively be hilarious if he does move up, manages to capture the belt, which I don't even think he has a great chance to do. And then Pereira's just like, I'll take that from you too, sir. Just this man, when you said earlier, and you said it yesterday on BTL, Mike, this is not a rivalry. Alex Pereira is Israel Adesanya's nemesis. He just defeats that man and delivers him loss everywhere he goes. And to continue this would be the best. If Izzy then like retired and got into race car driving and Pereira was just like, I too would like to drive stock cars, it would be the happiest moment of my life.
Just can you imagine a world where this man, who on his 10th UFC fight would have become a double champion, or 10th like MMA fight, period, will have become a double champion? Like this is just the most bizarre thing ever. It really is. I know we've said it before, but so strange. All of this is so strange.
I'll ask this one. Have you noticed there seems to be a bunch of online hate towards Izzy from Pereira fans, even though he's been the winner, whereas I don't think I've seen any hate towards Pereira from Izzy fans? It's kind of interesting. I haven't seen like any hate towards Pereira at all because I think people think that Pereira might see it and go to their house and address it.
Genuinely, how do you hate him? He's just cool, dude. Because, as I was pointed out earlier, it's the difference between true confidence and bravado. He's not out here just talking shit to talk. Like, anything he says is usually like, yeah, I've knocked that dude out. That's a fact. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. Like, the rest of it, he's, embracing his indigenous heritage and shooting bows and arrows and just being cool. Like, he's just a cool dude. You can't hate on him. Like,
Also,
I think Izzy's gotten more hate than he's deserved for parts of his career, but like, it's also objectively true. He is much easier to hate on. Like, he makes it easy in some regards.
Also, just how do you hate on someone who's 3-0, right? Like if you've won every single time we've done something, at a certain point, like I can't say anything to you, or my fans can't say anything to you. Like it's just you won the battle. Like what is there to say? And that's I think we've seen that this week with Izzy. Was just like, what can he say right now other than just acknowledging the situation and the reality of it? Like there's nothing really to say.
All right, one more. Over under 5.5 underdog wins tomorrow.
Let me count.
I have to look, but I mean
I'm taking under because 5.5 is a lot, but there are a lot of live dogs on this card.
What do we got,
it would not shock me if
13.
Pereira, Masvidal, Font, Ponzinibbio, Chris Curtis all won. None of those would shock me. Mearshart, also a live dog. Michelle
Watterson,
Gomez, probably a live dog.
Calvillo.
I'm not entirely sure Chase Sherman's a live dog, but I'm entirely certain Carl Williams shouldn't be minus 400 against a functional heavyweight. Calvillo, live dog.
Garcia.
Garcia's probably a live dog.
Sam Hughes in some
probably
respects.
a live dog, just in the fact that I don't have any idea what Amram is going to look like, but there's a lot of live dogs. I would reflexively pick under 5.5.
Yeah,
is a lot for
if it was 3.5, you'd go over though, right?
3.5, I think, is a much better set. It's much more interesting. I still might go under, but I'd feel a lot worse. A 5.5, I feel pretty decent just saying under. It's a lot of underdogs.
I could see 4. 4 feels like the perfect number.
4, I get 3 or 4, so I think 3.5 is the right call there, Mike, if you're actually setting that over under.
Yeah, I think that's the good line right there. All right, I think we're done. I think we've done a pretty nice job here setting the table, and we're not done because we'll have the ceremonial weigh-ins coming up a little bit later. You can check that out on MMAfighting.com. You can watch the video afterwards on the MMAfighting.com YouTube channel. We have the 30th anniversary panel discussion that's coming up. I believe George St. Pierre is a part of said panel.
I love throwing the GSP into the middleweight legends panel. It's just
with one friggin' middleweight fight.
100%. I'm sorry, 100% win rate and championship rate at the weight class.
Can't argue with it. Legend. Middleweight legend GSP.
Love it. So that is happening. So stay tuned for that as well. And then tomorrow it'll be People's Pre-Fight Show. Jed and I will get you ready. We will answer your questions, get you fired up for UFC 287. Time TBD. I think the prelim start at 6 p.m. Eastern. If that's the case, we'll go at like 5:15. Then we'll have the watch party, 9:45 p.m. Eastern. Myself, GC. Shaheen, tell the people when I talk about this cold open for the watch party.
Lordy.
Am I overselling? Because I don't think I am. I don't think I'm overselling this.
I mean, Godfather 2, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, cold open watch party. Like it's right up there with it. It's one of the greatest pieces of cinema I've ever seen. And I'm frankly just in awe that I get to work with you, Mike Heck, and also with Connor Burks, Mr. GC, because that is one of the finest pieces of content that I have seen in a long time.
Yeah. And I'm just like, all I did was voice it and but Connor's like in my brain when it comes to this stuff. Like he knows what I'm thinking. I know what he's thinking. We're like Stockton and Malone out there, at least playing basketball, not as human beings. So let's keep that into perspective. And then post-fight coverage as well. Jose is in Miami, so we'll have interviews, all the post-fight stuff. It'll be a good time. So stick with us at MMAfighting.com for all your UFC 287 needs. For Shaheen, for Jed, I am Mike Heck. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody.
Love y'all.